This episode of A Pair of Bookends is sponsored by Stained Paper Creations. They create bespoke vintage-style bookmarks and prints. One of our lucky listeners will have the chance to win a selection of bookmarks. All you need to do is leave us a screenshot of your review of the podcast with your Insta handle and DM us at A Pair of Bookends Pod.
Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. We are your hosts and hopefully your new bookish pals. I'm Hannah MacDonald.
And I'm Lydia Clare. Each month we'll feature a book of our choice. We'll chat about our opinion of the books and the themes surrounding it. We'll also be discussing other bookish things such as events, prizes, upcoming releases and other exciting news. We hope you enjoy.
On today's episode of A Pair of Bookends, we will be talking about the new novel from Hanya Yanagihara, To Paradise. For those of you who aren't familiar with Hanya's work, Hanya is the author of 3 novels, including the hugely acclaimed and cult classic A Little Life. She is the editor-in-chief of the New York Times Style magazine and basically an all-round icon. But first, should we catch up?
Oh, yes. So, Hannah, what are you currently reading?
I am currently reading The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara because we were attempting to finish reading her back catalogue before doing today's episode. However...
did we manage?
No, we did not.
No.
Our expectations of ourselves was too high.
Something you will come to learn from us is we don't always deliver on our promises.
God, you're going to turn everyone away, Lydia.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So yeah, I'm only about 140 pages into that. It's quite dense, not gonna lie.
I'm just saying, when I'm reading it also, when the footnotes of a novel can actually make up more of the page than the text itself, that's when we're going to have problems.
Yeah, we're going to have lots of problems. Yeah. I hate the footnotes. Hate them.
Why?
No.
Just why?
Not for me. Not for me. Hanya Horn, come on.
I mean, the
Let me talk to you real
concept
quick.
of the book itself is so fascinating. If you haven't heard of The People in the Trees, which even Hanya herself has said, no one's read it. But if you've not heard of the book, it's about a scientist who discovers a tribe that don't age in the same way that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, talking about like fountain of youthy sort of things.
Yeah.
And I think that concept in itself is very interesting, but then we learn about his slightly dodgy dealings.
Yeah, he has been accused of sexually assaulting one of his adopted children. And the book is kind of narrated by a friend and a person that works in the lab with him, who kind of disregards the awful thing that he's been accused of doing because he's so prolific in the medical industries. And that's the thing that kind of drew us into wanting to read the book. However, the footnotes.
And there's a lot of talk about pubic hair.
Yeah.
Too much. I mean, I don't mind a little bit.
Yeah.
But
they've just met this woman from this tribe and they're describing her pubic hair in
detail.
Such detail.
As
Lydia, what's at the top of your TBR?
Oh, what is at the top of my TBR? Well, you know me, I've got a few. But I am hopefully going to get to All the Light We Cannot See.
Yes, we're hoping to buddy read that, actually. Hoping to. And I've heard the chapters are short, so although it's a long book, I've heard the chapters are short. So
one question I need to ask you, Hannah.
Yeah.
Are the footnotes in it?
I mean, if there are, then that's me.
That's
me out. That's me out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've heard so much buzz around it, so yeah. I was like, I need to read it. And do you ever have one of those books that sat on your TBR, and every time you look at it, you're like, I need to read that?
Yeah.
But you never do. But has there been any bookish news in your life, Hannah, that's making you excited?
Bookish news. Now, I am your gal for adaptations. I love an adaptation. And the very exciting upcoming adaptation is Conversations with Friends, one of Sally Rooney's novels. And if you don't know me, I adore Sally Rooney.
Can I just explain now? You can't see her, but she's currently in a jumper with a quote from Normal People on it. So
the Normal People adaptation is honestly one of the most visually stunning things I have ever watched. Paul Mescal's performance was just incredible. Their whole relationship, kind of the frustration of being a young person and the expectations that are placed on you. Oh, it was just such a gorgeous adaptation, and I was completely obsessed. So I'm really excited for the Conversations with Friends adaptation, which I think is coming out in May. Also, our gal Dolly, her adaptation of Everything I Know About Love is coming out this year, but I'm not certain on dates yet. So maybe I'll be raving about that in an upcoming episode. Who knows? Also, we've got the Women's Prize long list, which has been announced in 4 days. So maybe by the time this episode goes out, it'll have been announced, which is exciting. Lydia, do you have any predictions for the long list?
I've got a few. I mean, anyone that knows me knows that I'm pretty much obsessed with the Women's Prize. Last year, I bought all 16 books on the long list.
Love the dedication.
I did not read them all. But I really, really loved Piranesi That Won by Susanna Clarke.
Still not read it.
Oh, it's stunning, guys. Absolutely stunning. And totally not what I would have predicted would have won. But very, very brilliant book. So this year, my predictions, I've got 3.
Right.
So I've got Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone that knows me, if there's a plane on the cover of a book, I'm buying it. I've not read it yet, but I've heard so much buzz around it. I also think The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak is going to feature.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, I'm going to eat my copy of it, because I actually think
Can you not?
Well, I've got to read it first. But I've heard so much about it, and we read 10 minutes, 38 seconds last year, and it was astounding. She's an astounding author.
Yeah.
And Still Life by Sarah Winman.
Yeah,
I think
heard
is going to definitely make the list. I just read Tin Man, and oh my goodness me, if you are looking for something to devastate you and make you miserable,
you're in for a treat.
Go for Tin Man. So yeah, definitely my favourite to be on the list.
But can I just say, if Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason doesn't make the list, heads are going to roll.
Yeah.
I'm going to be coming for people.
I know. We're going to have to tie you down or something, aren't we?
Yeah. I am so obsessed with that book, and I'll be so upset if it doesn't get the recognition it deserves. I mean, I've raved enough about it.
What about Paper Palace?
I'm not sure. It's had mixed reviews. I adored it.
Mm-hmm.
Thought it was incredible. Also, in bookish news, cannot wait for the HBO adaptation of that. But yeah, I'm not sure if I'll make it on there.
It'll be interesting.
I don't feel like it's been raved about enough.
No, I am most excited for the upcoming, third book in the series of the Thursday Murder Club series. I've not read the second one, which is The Man Who Died Twice, but it is on my TBR. So, as we all say, I'll get to it at some point. But I loved that book. And so the new one is called The Bullet That Missed, which is just the coolest title ever.
That sounds... I'm intrigued,
Honestly, 4 elderly, fantastic characters.
Love that.
Solving mysteries, and it's not in the least bit Miss Marpley.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Don't worry.
You've intrigued me now.
Good. I'm glad. Job's done.
Now, should we take them to paradise?
Oh, why not?
So, Lydia,
yes.
Would you like to give us a summary of To Paradise?
Well, I can try. It's hard to summarise.
Yeah.
But I'd say To Paradise it's an epic novel. I mean, it's set over 3 centuries, so it's 1893, 1993, and 2093, We follow a vast number of characters tackling themes of love, heritage, generational trauma, over 3 sections of the book. So, Hannah, what did you think of the structure being that it's in 3 parts?
You know what? I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy it, and I was actually really pleasantly surprised. I loved the structure. I'm not one for historical fiction. It's really not my favourite genre at all. So if you've got any recommendations of must-read historical fiction, please fire them my way, because...
You're going to have like 4 million DMs now.
Because I'm not going to pick them up otherwise. Like, I'm just not drawn to them as much as I am to contemporary fiction. But I really, really loved the 1893 section. And I also adored... I'm really into like dystopian stuff, so loved the 2093 section at the end. I think it's one of those books where you have to kind of study it. You need to make notes of names and places, and you need to kind of know the who's who.
Yeah.
So I know our friend Gabby at Humphreys did draw out a family tree because she needed to know. She's a very organised kind of gal. I mean, if you saw the tabbing on her Book of Paradise, you'd be impressed.
Yeah.
Hanya, when we met Hanya, we went to Hanya's recent event in Manchester, and we went and had our book signed, and she was very impressed with Gabby's book.
Very impressed.
Very impressed. So.
Made it the feature of the photo.
The same names I think you struggle with.
Oh, right. Can we just talk about that for a second?
Everyone being called David, Edward or Charles.
Everyone. Even the women. The women are called Charles.
Charlie. So that is quite a struggle.
You do have to kind of get past it, don't you? It's hard because when you're reading it all in one chunk, you finish, say, first David's story.
Yeah.
And then you pick up the next book and there's David again, but it's not the same David. It's a completely different David. It can be quite hard to manage.
Yeah. I really liked that she played with how different things could be. You know, like in the 1893 section, it being New York being this free state where same-sex marriage is the norm, and women working in positions of power is the norm. And I just found that really interesting that she played with that.
Yeah.
And I'm always kind of considering how different things would be if one decision was made differently.
It's like the butterfly effect.
Yeah. And so I really liked how she played with that in the first section.
Yeah.
I found interesting that the AIDS crisis was so kind of largely hinted at in the second section, but it was never explicitly said that it was the AIDS crisis.
It was just called the disease.
The disease or the illness or something like that. Yeah. But yeah, I know some people really struggled with it, but I did like it. What about you?
I did. I mean, I am beloved to the first section. And I think that, I've always sort of resisted books with lots of different sections or that are split into certain sections, because I love a straightforward, like, A to B narrative, something that's, you know, going to take you on that journey and you're not going to have to be taken out of it. There are no footnotes, that kind of thing. You know, where you're immersed in one person's story, in a central protagonist. I mean, that's my favourite type of reading. Yeah. So for me to like turn onto this, it was a big difference, especially when you compare it to like A Little Life, where we follow Jude and we just follow Jude. You know, in the initial parts of the book, yes, you do meet his friends, but ultimately it becomes Jude's story, and that's what I love so much about that book. And so it was hard to kind of go from that to here's a vast number of characters all with the same name, all in different places.
I do love books with multiple perspectives. And an author that does it really well, who I was obsessed with in my late teens, is Jodi Picoult.
Oh, yes.
I think one of my favourites by her is Small Great Things. But she does multiple perspectives really, really well. And I think, you know, like with this book, if it's done well, it can be an incredible book.
Oh, massively.
And, you know, getting inside all these kind of different people's minds within the same scenario is so fascinating, because you might look at that person through one character's eyes and hate them. And then when you're inside their mind, you see them in a totally different light. Yes.
Yeah. I think a great book that does that as well is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo.
Yes.
You're looking at all these different perspectives on girlhood, womanhood, otherhood, you know, and what that means to people. And that's a great narrative structure where literally every chapter is a different person.
Yeah. But such a good book.
It's so good.
So good. And which was your favourite section?
Well, it has to be the first section. I fell in love with David and his capacity to love and his whole sort of being. He was this wonderful man who wasn't nice all of the time. He was completely flawed, and he had these dark days and this difficulties in his past. And his relationship with his grandfather was the greatest.
It really was.
Relationship. It's very hard to write a relationship between a grandfather and a grandson in such an intelligent and empathetic way. Yeah. She just made you love them both so much, and you could see his grandfather rooting for him. Yeah. Every step of the way. Yeah. Every step of the way. He was rooting for him. And there was a moment where he shouts his name. Oh. That will crush your soul. Yeah. And it's what Hanya Yanagihara writes best. Yeah. She writes sorrow and trauma and realism when it comes to emotion better than half of the writers out there. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah. May I just add in, although you probably already realised, that this episode may contain spoilers. And I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry for that.
Sorry, but
we've dedicated the episode to the book, so therefore we must speak about the book.
We will try and be vague where we can.
Will. Maybe.
Probably not.
I did think that part of the way through the book, obviously Hanya Yanagihara is known for writing traumatic content.
If you've read A Little Life, you'll know what we mean.
Yeah. And I thought, so naive of me, that, you know, I got halfway through the book and thought, oh, we've escaped it. I was wrong. I was really wrong. As Lydia said, she writes sorrow so beautifully, and the endings of each section, I think if we're going to talk about the structure and the sections, we need to talk about the way that they all three of them end, because it's so painful. And if you don't like a cliffhanger,
honestly, yeah, hanging
on this one ain't for you.
Your fingers, tips of your fingers, you're hanging off those cliffs. There's no hope of a neat and tidy ending with this woman. No, she stresses me out, honestly. Though we did get a little sneaky inside.
Sneaky by sneaky insight, I basically begged Hanya.
We begged her
at the signing event in Manchester. I begged her and said, listen, Hanya Hun, I've had 2 sleepless nights since finishing To Paradise. I need to know how this book ends. And if you've not read the whole book, then I'm giving you 5 seconds now to skip. But the ending of the final section, I needed to know if Charlie escaped or not. And she told us.
She told us. I mean, we removed the knife from her throat.
We did. But and then she told us. However, we promised Hanya that we wouldn't reveal, so I'm sorry, guys.
We will tell you if you come and speak to us in person. We will tell you.
Maybe. But Hanya told us not to, and we're friends now, so.
No, yeah, we can't, you can't betray the trust of your busy mate.
You can't.
So, Hannah, what didn't work for you?
I wasn't as big of a fan of the second section as I was of the other 2 sections. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I just wasn't as invested. I felt really hooked in for the narrative of the first section and the third section. And I mean, she does this really, really well, though. So whilst it's not my favourite section, I have to say how well she does this in writing really frustrating characters. Because there's so many decisions that were made in A Little Life that I could have screamed.
Yes.
And I got so frustrated with Jude on so many occasions in A Little Life. And I was like, please just tell somebody how you're feeling, or please just do this. And of course, Hanya likes to disappoint. So she likes to be like, I know that's what you want, audience, but I'm not going to give you that.
You're not having it, no.
So I think in the second section, I was most frustrated with the character in that. He was obviously really struggling mentally. So you can't deny that. And that's the reasoning for the choices that he made. But the way his own son had to take care of him, and he was just kind of, I mean, he was entangled in this really toxic, abusive relationship, and he completely lost all control of himself. And, you know, that kind of thing happens. But I just felt really frustrated about the kind of loss of his relationship with his son and how that kind of came back to bite him. I think that's the only thing that I would say didn't work for me.
I think it's hard when it is the second, and the middle section, should I say, of the novel, because your first section, yes, it was so moving, it was so beautiful. For me, it was the best bit of the book. To then go from that into another story completely, and to have to get to grips with everything all over again is hard enough in itself. I found that quite difficult. And then the fact that book 3 is the longest book.
Yeah.
I actually got to be immersed in it.
Yeah.
It took me a good few chapters to get into it, but as soon as I was like, this is brilliant, the world building and things like that. That's what it did for me, because it was longer, because I had more time with the characters. Whereas I do think the middle, it didn't feel rushed, but I felt like I needed to spend a bit more time with them.
Lydia, who was your favourite character and why?
Oh, it's a tricky one. I would have to say my favourite character was David's grandfather in the first book. He is not particularly the main focus of the first book, but he is such a fantastic subsidiary character. People forget a lot of the time when they write novels, like I write novels all the time, but they forget that your subsidiary characters are the making of the main character. They are what create the main character's motives and emotions and reactions and actions. And I think that his grandfather was a perfect example of how to write a great subsidiary character.
Yeah.
And all he wanted was to create a safe environment for this child, who then becomes this man. And I think that it's such a hard situation for him to be in. He watches David ultimately kind of make his own bed and have to lie in it. And that is so hard as a parent or a grandparent to not be able to physically step in and say, you cannot do that. I can take away your privileges, I can take away all of this, but ultimately you still have your own mind and you can still walk out that door. And I just absolutely loved him. Who was your favourite character?
I probably would agree that it's the grandfather for every reason you've just stated. Lydia is the most eloquent person you will ever meet, so thank God she's my co-host.
Unless I'm put on the spot and then forget all the words.
So I would probably say a cross between the grandfather and, you know, I really loved in the final section and I'm going to forget all the names even though they're all the same. Was it Edward, Charlie's husband's boyfriend? But I adored the relationship between his boyfriend and him, and just that whole beautiful, beautiful scene between the three of them. Oh my gosh, like it will move you to tears.
I'm
Like
welling up.
Yeah, it was so beautifully done. Yeah, just them not allowed to be with who they want to be with and having to navigate that, and kind of the love and the respect and the care that they all had for each other in the situation that they were in. And it was just so like wholesome and painful, and I don't know, it was just one of them moments, and I was like, oh, like that is just such a well-written character, because he was only in it for a really short section.
He actually is. I'm looking at the book now because obviously it's to hand, and and literally it's like, what page is it? 690 I'm on. Bearing in mind this is only like 700 pages long, and he's only just come in it.
Yeah, so a really short segment that he's in, and I just think his character is so beautiful.
Fritz.
Is that his name?
That's his name.
Oh. I mean, everyone's called Edward James. Edward, David and Charlie. So I assumed that his name was Edward. I'm wrong.
The only person not called David, Edward or Charlie
is Fritz.
Would you believe it? To go for a name like
But
Fritz.
we love Fritz. I might get him on a t-shirt.
I would.
Yeah.
I would.
Lydia.
Oh, yes.
As a Little Life is one of your favourites.
Oh, it is.
Would you like to talk about Hanya's previous work in comparison to Paradise?
Absolutely. So, yeah, A Little Life, I can't deny it. It moved me. It broke me.
Is there anyone it didn't break?
Probably not. I was not one of the people that gave up. Although I do not blame people for giving up, because it is a tough read.
Yeah.
If you don't know about it, it's basically about a young boy called Jude who goes through very traumatic experiences again and again and again, and it never seems to let up. He gets older, he meets friends, and still his life is just a sequence of traumatic events, which to me is quite realistic. People do go through these things in their lives. There are not people that get perfect endings with tied up little bows and no trauma at all in their lives. I mean, if they do exist, please let me know, because I'd like to marry one. But yeah, so it's a hard read. There are lots of trigger warnings. Make sure to check them out if you're going to pick up that book, because my goodness, I picked it up completely unknowing of what was even it was even about. I had it bought for me, and then I was told I had to read it, and so I read it, and honestly, it was the hardest book I've ever read, and the greatest book I think I've ever read. Absolutely fantastic. And whenever someone says to me, what book would you recommend, I always recommend A Little Life, with a massive caveat of you have to be in the right headspace to read it.
100%.
So yeah, one of my favorite books of all time. Now, in comparison with to Paradise, again, I think I prefer A Little Life because of that first person narrative, that one person narrative, and again, it's very epic in its scale, but epic in just the fact that it's Jude's story the whole way through. The writing is just so beautiful in both. In both of the novels. It's
really visceral.
Yeah, you can feel it when she talks about something, particularly when it's something traumatic. You feel it. And this is why it's so full of trigger warnings, because it can bring up a lot of your own emotions, your own feelings. I mean, I remember reading Little Life and walking around and sort of feeling like a bit glum and a bit down, and sort of going, I don't know why I feel like this. And then my other half was like, what book are you reading? And I was like, oh yeah, that'll be it then. So yeah, I think that if you are a particularly sensitive soul, just be careful with it.
I don't think you need to be as careful with To Paradise.
No.
Although it has difficult themes, I don't think it's in any way as traumatic as A Little Life was.
No, I think obviously with any novel there has to be conflict, there has to be drama, there has to be something that is going to be difficult to read. I think otherwise it's just going to be a bit bland and a bit boring. So I think it's important to remember that. But with To Paradise, it definitely feels more of a restrained Hanya Yanagihara.
Yeah.
Rather than her full, you know, I'm going to ruin your life vibe.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That she tends to go for.
Yeah.
And the people in the trees, of what I've read of it so far, feels very much like the scientific-y side of To Paradise.
Yeah, I agree.
It feels like that's where her roots lie. She does love a bit of science and medicine and in her writing, and I think that it's definitely more prevalent in the people in the trees.
Yeah.
If you're not into that, you're going to struggle with the book, I think.
100%.
Like we are.
Yeah.
Also, if you hate footnotes, don't do it.
Don't do it. I think she did say at the event that her father was an oncologist, I think. And you can definitely sense in the people in the trees and in To Paradise that she kind of grew up kind of in that environment, and she kind of grew up around these types of people.
And interesting that the doctor in A Little Life was sort of like a hero.
Yeah. I did love that character.
It was beautiful. But yeah, I think in comparison to her other novels, To Paradise is definitely, you can see the way she's improved in the way that in her boldness as well.
Yeah.
She's always been a bold writer.
Yeah.
But I think To Paradise, you know, people would never have expected.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna call it now. I think To Paradise is a masterpiece, and I honestly, if that doesn't make the Women's Prize list as well, I'll be shocked.
If you don't get a quote on the next release of a cover on the paperback, Hannah MacDonald, this is a masterpiece, I'll be very shocked.
She cares who Hannah from Manchester is. But no, I honestly think To Paradise is my favourite.
Yeah.
I know A Little Life is your favourite, Lydia.
It
but
is.
To Paradise is my favourite.
I can't deny it.
Although Jude and Willem forever. We'll get that on a t-shirt also.
You can actually get t-shirts, you know.
That's got their names
with
on
the
it.
JB Willem. Yes. It's so cute. I want to get one.
But I just want Jude and Willem on mine. I mean, no, I like the other characters, but Willem is... In fact, you know what? Just Willem. I just love Willem. I love him so much.
Tattoo on the forehead.
Willem, I just want to talk to you, please.
Oh, Willem.
So, what theme, Lydia, most interested you in To Paradise?
Oh, I can tell you that right now. Generational trauma.
Love a bit of that.
I love it. So I am a bit obsessed with it, I think. And I love how you can see the formation of a person from their parents, their grandparents, and ultimately, in some ways, their ancestors.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of cultural heritage and, you know, race identity and things like that. I think it's such an interesting subject, and I think it's something that Hanya does very well in this novel.
Yeah.
You know, although the characters in themselves are not interrelated throughout the whole novel, you can see these kind of themes coming out all of the time, you know, particularly between a grandparent and their grandson, granddaughter.
Yeah.
How the way that they act have shaped the world of their future generations, and it's just so fascinating. Yeah, really fascinating. How about you?
I probably would agree. But I just loved how the book kind of, like, at the center of it is just about being human, and how much we're shaped by the world around us and trying to navigate the world as it changes, and, you know, how the smallest kind of change in history can kind of impact you as an individual.
Yeah. But yeah, I think one question I am anxious to ask you is, how did you feel reading a book about the pandemic when in a pandemic? Or, as some would hope to believe, coming out of a pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. At her event, she was talking about a discussion that she'd had with scientists that were working on pandemics. Is that the right terminology? Who knows? Who knows? I know nothing about science, so let's roll with that. She was talking about this, and she said, because obviously the third section of the book explores kind of rolling pandemics, and this scientist in particular that she was having a conversation with whilst researching for To Paradise said that there was a big pandemic coming. Now, obviously, Hanya wrote this book. Look at me saying Hanya like she's my best mate.
Yes.
Hanya wrote this book prior to COVID. So this scientist had said, there's a pandemic that's coming and it's going to be big, but it's not going to be kind of catastrophic. I mean, it was in a sense, but at the same time, it didn't wipe out the world, did it?
Yeah.
But they did say to her that they think we're kind of approaching
what they called the big one.
The big one, and rolling pandemics, and that just terrified me. And I think, I'm not kind of emotionally stable enough to kind of think of another pandemic happening when we've just been through one. Like, we're only just kind of coming out of it.
Yeah.
I did kind of find it difficult, but then I also thought that it helped me to empathise with the characters more, knowing that experience and what that's like and how kind of surreal it feels. And it was very strange to me to feel so immersed in a dystopian novel. Because, when you read dystopian novels, usually you can be like when I read Vox, I was kind of thinking, with the wrong person in power. I think we read Vox when Donald Trump was in power, didn't we? Yeah, well. And
enough
we were,
said.
And I was kind of thinking, if the wrong person's in power, like him, then anything is kind of possible. They can kind of make things up as they go along, and it doesn't matter who they destroy, they'll do it. As we're seeing it play out now.
I was literally just about to say,
as
Putin.
we're now seeing it play out with Putin, and but I felt so kind of immersed, and I don't think I would have had as much as a kind of visceral experience of reading To Paradise had it not have been for us just going through COVID.
Yeah. And
what about
interesting, very interesting how she wrote it pre-pandemic. I mean,
did say she's a witch.
She is a witch. She's got to be. She's got to have something. Tea leaves or talons or something. Something went on. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting how she was kind of already thinking about it. I mean,
just really unnerving, isn't it?
It's scary, isn't it?
The thought of another one, like, can we not?
Can we not?
Can we not?
Unless it's just at the Kremlin.
Yeah. Now, Lydia, similar to Gabby, I know you have tabbed certain parts of the book. But I believe you've got a favourite quote for us.
I do.
Which we love.
It's a bit long, but
we love a long quote.
I mean, imagine it. I'd just sit here, read the old book.
We wouldn't have picked a book this big if we didn't like long.
As I talked about before, my love of David, and in the first book, and the way that he loves people. So this is him talking about sort of falling in love with a man named Edward. But in the absence of that, he would have to be satisfied with the secret of Edward, which he carried inside him like a lick of bright white flame. Something that burned high and pure, and which warmed only him, and which he feared would vanish if he examined it too closely. By thinking of him, he felt almost as if he'd conjured him, a phantom only he could see, leaning against the secretary at the back of the room, behind Charles, smiling at David, and David alone. Hello.
Beautiful. Tear my eye.
And it's just, the first book is so full of that. It's so full of this, the way she talks about that bright white burning lick of flame of love. And it's just, in anyone else's hands, that would be cheesy. That would make me feel like, ugh.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it feels so authentic.
Yeah.
When it's written by her.
Agreed.
And with these characters. And yeah, I just love it. I loved it.
Now, we do invite questions from our listeners. And I believe before anybody's even listened, we've got a question on the book.
Yeah, so Stephen has asked us, if you'd read The People in the Trees before any other Hanya Yanagihara book, would you have continued on and read her subsequent novels?
Now, I don't want to offend our gal Hanya, but you know what? I think,
bearing in mind you haven't actually read all of it yet.
This is true. I think potentially, if we were in an age without social media, maybe not.
Yeah.
Unless I read the blurb and was drew in by, I do like, if a blurb sounds amazing, then I've obviously got to read it.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be really difficult living with social media and seeing the hype around her books to not want to read her subsequent books.
Especially with The Little Life and how it kind of blew up.
Yeah.
The People in the Trees.
It's the footnotes.
It's the footnotes, guys.
The footnotes, Liz.
Seriously. Like.
We can't.
No.
But
we will finish it.
We will.
We're dedicated
we will.
to finish it. We're not DNFers.
No, we're not.
Not
in this joint.
We shall read it and we will update you.
We'll report back.
And let you know whether or not we got over the footnotes.
Now each
and
episode.
Pubic hair.
Oh no!
I know.
Lydia,
I'm sorry.
Not pubic hair again.
I know, but it's so prevalent.
God's sake.
Okay, move on.
Moving on. Each episode, when we are talking about a book, we are also going to give you, if you like this, then read this.
I feel like that should require a theme tune. If you like this, then read this.
So Lydia, do you want to start with the recommendations you have?
Oh, of course. So yeah, I mean, going back to my favourite theme of generational trauma.
Are you okay?
I'm not. No, I'm not. I would definitely say the book was reminiscent in that theme of Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. Oh my goodness, I've only just recently read it and it is fantastic. It is, again, it's one of those epic novels. It spans generation upon generation upon generation, and yet you can still see the kind of ramifications of the first person's actions on the last person's life, and it's so well done. And I also read Transcendent Kingdom last year, and that is another fantastic novel. Yeah, if you're looking for a really good, gritty, generational trauma centered book, that is a fantastic place to start. Also a little bit more manageable than To Paradise.
It's a bit smaller.
Yeah, and again in the same vein, Pachinko was another fantastic generational book where you span these lives of this family, and it was exceptional again.
And they're bringing out the adaptation of that soon.
Oh my God, honestly, here she is with her adaptation.
Love him.
And also, have you seen the cover of the paperback of Pachinko?
Stunning.
Oh my gosh, if I could get that blown up and put on my wall, I would. But yeah, so definitely for me, those two are my top recs for, like, if you love this, you are going to really want to get your hands on these.
Yeah.
Definitely. How about you?
Well, as I said before, I'm into my dystopians. One of my favourite books of all time is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, our queen. The book and the series are both incredible. Here I am again with my adaptations. But I think that adaptation is so perfectly done. Elizabeth Moss.
Imagine Elizabeth Moss. Imagine
Elizabeth Moss. It's so incredible in this series. I mean, the performances from all the cast in The Handmaid's Tale are just insane. Like, so good. I think if you want a dystopian, probably everybody on this earth has read The Handmaid's Tale.
No, they actually haven't, though, because I actually asked quite a few people the other day.
No, this really upsets me. Okay, if you've not read The Handmaid's Tale, go and read it. If you want a dystopian, like, that is just a phenomenal book. Really, really phenomenal and dark and unnerving, and just really quite disturbing, but also really like powerful and just makes you want to do more and want to, you know, it makes you angry. And my friend Emma Hines, who is a playwright, she often speaks about her writing process to me. And there's a play that she's been writing recently, and she's been talking about wanting the audience to come away wanting to change something. And if you're always given a good ending, then the reader or the audience feels settled afterwards, and you don't always want that. You want them to go out and change the world and make it better. And I think you really get that sense in The Handmaid's Tale. Also Vox, which I mentioned earlier, not my favourite dystopian, but I did find it a really interesting read. And I think you suggested also The Power.
Yeah, The Power by Naomi Alderman is just, it's a right rollicking dystopian novel.
Rollicking.
It really is. Honestly, and yeah, in the same vein of like, as well, of kind of kids, it's a YA novel, of kind of kids having to pick up the mantle that's dropped by their previous generations, and having to kind of be like, okay, we've got to sort this out. That's a great novel for that. And I'd also say, if you love a classic like 1984, it's just occurred to me. But 1984 by George Orwell is a fantastic place.
I did love
to
that book.
Start. If you love a bit of dystopia, go back to that, because that he
I read that in the first lockdown. Can you imagine?
Oh my lord, where was your head at, woman?
I don't know.
So something like 1984. That felt very like the third book in To Paradise.
Yeah,
with its kind of like Big Brother-esque, we are watching you situation.
So, your rating, I'm going to throw this at you because we've definitely not prepped this.
Oh, jeez Louise.
Your rating of To Paradise, what we're talking?
We are talking, and now I have to put this into context. What am I like with me 5 stars?
Shady.
I just don't give them out.
Shady
I mean,
AF.
Unless I'm quoted on the cover, you're not getting a 5-star review from me. However, this is an absolute fantastic novel. I absolutely loved the first section. Second section, meh. Third section, loved it.
Yeah.
For me, are we allowed increments of 0.25?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Only for you, Lydia. I wouldn't allow anyone else this privilege.
I think I would give this a 4.25.
Wow.
I would.
Wasn't expecting that. That's high for you.
Yeah, it is quite high for me.
Yeah.
I'm quite proud of myself.
I'm going to give it straight up 5 stars.
Knew it.
Yeah. Who am I kidding? Really, really intrigued to see what she writes next.
Yeah.
On to the section that I am incredibly excited for.
Yes.
We should have a theme tune for this section. Here we have Boyf Picks. Now, Lydia thinks this name's cringy.
I think it's cringy and cheesy.
But I love it. So the basis of this choice, now we may get other people to come along and pick for us in future podcasts, but the basis of this is that Lydia's partner constantly buys her books.
He's an enabler.
He loves it. He tells her off for having books, but he buys them all the time. So we thought, why not give him a little segment on this episode?
Why not?
So, what am I allowed to say his name?
Yeah. Don't panic.
So, we have asked Stephen to pick a book and give us his reasons on why he's picked the book, and we are going to rate his choice.
We have no prior knowledge. Of this novel. I have it in a bag beside my leg.
She's not seen it. We've no idea what it is.
I've not seen it. Hannah's not seen it. We have no idea. I know that he got it from a Waterstones.
That's all we know.
But that is all I know.
And he also apparently recruited a Waterstones bookseller as a listener.
He actually did. If you are listening, Waterstones bookseller from Crewe.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for listening. The guy that was flirting with you is my partner. You may have him.
Lydia, would you like to give us a reveal of the book?
Okay, I'm excited. I'm super excited. So this is a fun thing to do for radio where you can't see it.
I am excited.
Okay.
You ready?
Take one off the top. Ready? Oh. Okay, so in front of me.
Oh, I am intrigued.
I am seeing it's a Sunday Times bestseller. It is called The Book of Trespass, Crossing the Lines That Divide Us. It's by Nick Hayes and it's published by Bloomsbury.
Interesting.
I have never heard of this.
Never.
In my life. If you guys have heard of it, please let me know.
I am so intrigued why he's picked this.
So I'm going to read the blurb quickly and then we'll hear what Stephen has to say about it.
Yeah.
So the blurb is, the vast majority of our country is entirely unknown to us because we are banned from setting foot on it by law of trespass. We are excluded from 92% of the land and 97% of its waterways. In the Book of Trespass, Nick Hayes embarks on a journey over the walls that divide us, revealing a long story of enclosure, exploitation and dispossession of public rights whose effects last to this day.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Let's hear what Stephen has to say about it.
Okay, ladies, so have a look at the book that I've chosen you in 3, 2, 1. Ta-da! It's the Book of Trespass by Nick Hayes. Now, I know what your faces are probably pulling, and if I could see them, I could probably guess what your faces do look like. However, I really like the front cover. Thought it looked really nice. Thought it was an interesting concept. I know it is non-fiction, which isn't normally what you guys go for, but I'm hoping it is interesting. The books that I will be choosing going forward will vary. So 1 month could be a classic. The next month could be something that everyone's raving about and talking about. And then it might be one like this, where it's something that you two probably wouldn't pick up and read. Hopefully it will definitely give you an opinion, either that you don't like it, or it might just shock you and you might like it. Anyway, enjoy reading.
Oh, well, Stephen. So, wow. Lydia, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking I would have never have picked this up.
Yeah, me too.
Ever in a million years.
Never.
A book about trespass? My initial thoughts are, who cares? Unless you're on my property, I'm not really bothered.
No.
But I'm not one to judge.
No.
Without giving it a read. Also, I'm flicking through and I'm seeing some beautiful illustrations.
Oh, love that.
Absolutely gorgeous illustrations. It would never have been a book I would have picked myself.
No.
Ever. And I think that's the beauty of when someone else picks a book for you sometimes. Mm-hmm. Particularly non-bookish people.
Yeah.
So Stephen is not a particularly bookish person.
Yeah.
He doesn't really read a lot. And so I always find it interesting what people choose.
Mm.
Because we obviously would go for the popular.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of female authored.
I would say so, yeah.
Literary fiction genre. Book.
I'm so intrigued by this.
I am so intrigued.
And I love that he said that the cover was one of the reasons why he picked it up.
Yeah.
Because I am so easily drawn in by a good cover.
Yeah, yeah.
So I can totally get...
Yeah.
I can totally get that.
Yeah.
And I was really intrigued by this. It's quite similar to Leave the World Behind cover.
Yes, yeah. It's got a large deer on the front.
Yeah. So I did look at this and think it was going to be a dystopian, and then realised when he said it's a non-fiction, I was like, oh, okay.
And we will let you know what we think of it.
We will report back.
And
also, I love his assumption that he's going to be picking books from here on out.
I know.
What if you want other people to pick, Stephen?
Apparently, it's no longer the boys
no,
picks,
listen.
it's just Stephen picks.
If Stephen wants to pick forever, that's fine.
But I'm gonna read the first paragraph.
Okay.
So we get a feel.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm ready.
So the chapter is called Badger.
Yeah.
It says fires, tracks, lines in legislation. It's got a quote from Mr. Badger in The Wind in the Willows. Any friend of mine walks where he likes in this country, or I want to know the reason why. Mr. Badger, loving the non-trespassing. So, first paragraph. On the morning of St. George's Day, 1932, a teenager called George B.T. Eliot took the train from his home in Preston. With his climbing ropes and enough supplies for a couple of days camping and roaming, he travelled the 60 miles to the brim of the Peak District and set off on foot.
Oh, I'm intrigued, actually.
And just so you know, and we're all aware, not a footnote in sight.
Gorgeous. We love to see it. Listen, don't I ever see a footnote again as long as I live?
No.
Nope.
Well, we've got to finish People and Trees first.
Yeah. And there's that. Okay, so what are we rating Stephen's pick?
Well, are we rating it out of 5? Like, not prepped. I would say my rating would be a 3.5.
Oh. And your reasoning?
My reasoning is that I'm not particularly bothered about the theme of trespass. I'm not really bothered at all.
Yeah.
But that the content looks pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm loving the illustrations. And I am always up for a bit of non-fic. What's your rating?
I am going to give him a...
Don't be overly generous.
A 3.
Oh!
Yeah, a 3.
Oh, I feel like I was overly generous.
No, I'm going to give him a 3. Definitely not my usual genre.
No.
Appreciate the cover. Love a good cover. So for that, he gets a good mark. I am really intrigued. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little disappointed that it's non-fiction, but I think that's my initial disappointment. So I'm sorry, Stephen. I love you so much.
You really don't,
but I am slightly disappointed because I don't know why I was expecting a fiction.
Me too.
And sometimes I see non-fictions on my shelf and I'm like, oh, I've got to pick that up.
Yeah.
But then I might pick it up and really, really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So it's just my initial war with all non-fiction that it's really difficult.
Every non-fiction book
every non-fiction. I'm like, oh, I can't be bothered to read it. I don't know why.
I feel you.
But I'm really intrigued by the subtitle, crossing the lines that divide us. I'm really hoping that there'll be an exploration of like race and class, or whether it's whether it's more literal than that, and it's literally about like, I don't know, like
don't
roads
step
in
over
the
my head.
Because if it's that, I'll be disappointed.
Yeah.
But if it means in a more metaphorical sense,
I think as well, with looking at current events in terms of like Ukraine and the devastating war that's happening there, and about how that is a fight over land. I think it's actually quite pertinent to read a book that is based on land and who owns what and why do you own it, and stuff like that. But it's either going to be super, super dry, like the Sahara, and not fun, or it's actually going to be really interesting.
I hear we've got some questions.
We do.
From some lovely people. So each month when we record an episode, we're going to put out a Q&A on our Instagram, which is at a pair of bookends pod, and you can submit your questions for the episode. Lydia, would you like to give us the questions?
I would love to. Okay, so at Humphreys, hi Gabby.
We love you.
We love you. She has asked us, we're both drama related, which we are.
We are.
So tell me, who would play you in a film?
Florence Pugh.
Oh,
I adore Florence Pugh. Now, this is going to sound so big-headed because I don't in any way look like Florence Pugh.
She does.
Apart from we have quite similar cheeks. I think she's just an incredible actor. And if I was going to trust anyone with my life story, then it would be her.
I love it.
What about you?
I would choose, only because throughout my entire life I've been mistaken for her, I would choose Billie Piper.
Yes! Oh my gosh! Yes!
My entire life.
Wow.
Funny story, I once was trying to get changed in a changing room at the Trafford Centre when a woman and her daughter accosted me at the height of Billie Piper's fame in Doctor Who, and got me to sign stuff and pose for photos. And I was too polite to say I wasn't her.
No.
Well, I kind of tried to protest, and I was like, oh no, the camera's out, and oh, it's happening. So somewhere out there, if you're listening, I'm sorry, you've got a picture of me. It's not Billie Piper.
You're so obsessed with that story.
But yeah, 100%. My whole life been told that I look like her, so I would choose Billie Piper. Also, she's absolutely cracking actor.
She is. I've actually got her box set of Secret Diary of a Call Girl.
Beautiful.
I was obsessed with that when I was younger.
Have you seen Rare Beasts?
No, I've not watched it yet.
Bloody brilliant.
Need to watch.
Yes. So, and also, Humph Reads has also asked us to reveal an unusual fact that those on Instagram or those listening to the podcast would not know.
I don't know if mine's interesting now.
But it's not.
I was going to say, I worked in hospitality for many years, and I used to be a manager at the UK restaurant chain Frankie and Benny's.
That is interesting.
It's not. It's really not.
I know I'm lying. It's not great.
What is yours?
All right. I am an aviation enthusiast.
You are?
Yeah.
If any book has a plane on the cover, it's going in Lydia's basket.
I will just buy it without even reading the blurb. I spend many a day at Manchester Airport Viewing Park.
Love that.
Watching the planes.
Love it.
They've got a massive Concorde in the back of it. It's amazing. So planes and books together.
Stunning.
That's my life.
You know what? You love what you love, hon.
Thank you.
Have we got any more questions?
We do. So at Books to Discuss, thank you for your question. They have asked us our least favourite book trope of all time.
Now, I'm terrible with naming book tropes, but one thing I did discuss with Lydia earlier is how much I despise cringy, romantic dialogue. I can't get on board with it, and I really struggle with some romance novels. My most recent romance read was actually one of the best romance novels I've ever read, and it was 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. And honestly, that is just a flawless romance novel. It's just a romance novel done well. But some of them are just so cringy, it pains me. And I know there's going to be so many Colleen Hoover fans coming for us. But I read It Ends With Us recently, and I enjoyed it. But there were moments that made me want to pull my own eyeballs out.
Yeah.
So that's me. What about you? What about you, Lyd?
Mine is, it's a bit of a weird one, but is the European jaunt. So this usually happens when the protagonist has come a cropper in their lives and has nowhere to go and nothing to do and feels out of sorts. And they somehow find a load of money and a villa in Italy or France. And they go there for about 2 weeks to 4 months, and they spend the summer there and they eat pasta and drink white wine and basically have a fantastic time.
Because we all have the money to work
Because we all do that. And then come back and then deal with their lives. And it just, the minute someone starts hopping on a plane in a book, I'm like, why are you going? Why are you going?
Come back.
The only person that got away with it was Sally Rooney in Normal People. And even then I was a bit like, why have you gone? Why? It's always, middle-class privileged white people that end up going.
Always.
But tell me what kind of plane you flew on? A380? Boeing? Come on.
Stop. In our final section today, we are going to be talking about some cultural recommendations that we have for you, as my beloved Hilo podcast, knew I could squeeze it in there somewhere, used to do and I adored. So, Lydia, what have you been enjoying recently?
What have I been enjoying recently? Oh, let me tell you, this is going to hurt.
Amazing.
The adaptation of Adam Kay's absolutely fantastic journal entry novel, which basically he was a NHS doctor. Was it 2006 he worked? Like around that era, I think
Must
it's
have
set.
been, yeah.
And he wrote journal entries as a doctor. And basically it's just hysterical, whilst also being completely traumatic and a great insight into the life of a doctor.
Yeah.
And the stress of the NHS.
Yeah, and the pressure that the NHS is under.
Yeah.
How hard they all work. It's just insane.
I mean, like, leaving your shift and then getting in your car and falling asleep in your car and waking up and going back to your next shift.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens.
And he's such a good actor. I think is it Ben Whishaw?
Ben Whishaw, yeah.
I really like him as Adam Kay.
Yeah.
I think he's got a really like dry humour, and he's just so good at all like the subtleties, and you know, he can like make you like cackle in one scene, and then you feel like you've been punched in the gut in the next scene. He's brilliant. I think he's really brilliant.
Yeah,
great actor for it.
He's a fantastic actor in it, and he just gets kind of that restrained kind of I'm fine persona perfect by you. I can see you bursting with excitement.
I really enjoyed the Netflix adaptation Central in Air. We should change the name of the podcast.
No, we're not. Took us long enough.
Of The Lost Daughter by Eleanor Ferrante.
Is that with Olivia Colman in?
It is.
I've not watched it.
It is. It is amazing. Now, this is a book that kind of reads like a thriller. There's just kind of this undercurrent throughout that's just really unsettling, and you're kind of waiting for something really explosive to happen, and it doesn't kind of come. And I really enjoyed the film. Jessie Buckley.
Oh, yes.
Now, Jessie Buckley's gone up for an award for this, and she has to win it. She has to. Her performance was literally exquisite, like amazing. And I really think her career is going to take... I mean, she's done really well so far, but I really think like this will catapult her career. Yeah. Because she was just amazing in it. And it's kind of one of them where very little happens. It's kind of more about the exploration of themes and characters, and it's, you know, it's a real kind of insight into motherhood and the pressure that's placed on women on how a mother should be, you know, what's expected of us, and how that kind of it changes our identity, and we have kind of a loss of identity when we become a mother. And it was just such an interesting kind of take on motherhood, which you don't see very often. We're kind of expected to be like these sweet maternal caring characters, and that's not always the way, you know. It's not always the way it happens, and you know, that's through no fault of your own. You know, you might just really struggle with motherhood, and it may be
a lot of people do,
and it just may be very difficult, and I just found it so powerful and moving. But yeah, my recommendation for today is The Lost Daughter, which is on Netflix at the moment, and I would also recommend the novel as well, as I read them kind of back to back. So that is all we've got time for today. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do rate, review and subscribe, as this allows other bookends to find us. If you wish to recommend our next book pick, please DM us at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram, or email us on apairofbookendspod@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.